Good evening, and thank you for coming to the official monthly action meeting for the North Penn School Board of Directors. Members of the audience are to note that we are taping this for viewing later on TV channels, so that should you choose to speak to the board, you will be taped and will be seen on TV. If you do choose to speak, please, when you're recognized by me, step to the podium and give your name and address for our records. Full information is on the front of the brochure that you received when you came in. Could you join me now in standing and pledging allegiance to the flag? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First thing on the agenda is the approval of minutes for the 670th meeting. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mengel, second by Brokowski. Any question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Committee reports. Tom Clements, Facilities.
Okay, I have a report on an update on some of the elementary schools in the AMCOP modulars. All units at the AMCOP modulars have been occupied and some minor punch list items remain. These items will be corrected in the next few weeks. Students and staff are very pleased with their new facilities, and I firsthand witnessed that. That's a definite fact that they like the new modulars. Bridle Path Elementary School masonry work on interior first floor walls is 80% complete. Insulation and the roof membrane are completed in all areas except for the multi-purpose room and the mechanical room. Temporary heat's being maintained in the entire building at between 45 and 50 degrees. The HVAC, plumbing, and electrical work continues at a very aggressive pace. Steel stud work is completed on exterior walls above the cafeteria. The Walton Farm Elementary School. The B-Pod interior masonry walls are complete. HVAC, plumbing, and electrical rough-in work is proceeding. Insulation and roof membrane is 80% complete on the low roof areas. Structural steel work is completed with the exception of the roof deck on A-Pod. Slab on grade is 65% complete, and the rough grading over the Texas Eastern pipeline is complete. And if anyone's had a chance to drive by there, you can see the gradual hump that does go over the pipeline. Entire water and sewer service is complete, and work has begun on electrical service to Allentown Road. Lansdale Square movie lot discussion. At the December 16th, 1993 public board meeting, the school board agreed to present a complete update of our holdings at Lansdale Square at the January meeting. Mr. Degger and Mr. Potash are actively negotiating a trade of lots outside of our area of interest for a like number in our area of interest. They have advised us that it is not wise to make a public presentation until an agreement has been signed. We will make a public presentation prior to board action on the above trade.
That's good.
That completes the report.
We have
Any
a
questions on that? So we can move on to the recommendation.
Oh, good. Great. Thanks, Tom. Go ahead.
Okay, move on to recommendations. Recommend approval of the appointment of Breslin, Ridyard, Federo Architects at a rate of 5.5% to provide architectural services for the new North Penn High School. An AIA contract will be prepared by Charles Potash for school board review and approval. This contract will provide for Dirk and Edson Associates as site planners and Joseph E. Byro and Associates Incorporated as mechanical engineers. I just might add to that too, I believe there was a report in the North Penn Reporter, and I think the reporter kind of made it look like architect walks off with $1.1 million. That's kind of how I read into it as a reporter reader, and I think that really doesn't do true justice to that 5.5%, because I think all board members realize that when Mr. Breslin and his firm engaged in this project, there are many other contractors or engineers that are involved, like Byro and like Dirk and Edson, where that 5.5% isn't just going right into Mr. Breslin's pocket. And I just thought I would add that as a comment.
So I take that as a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alan. Any question?
comment, Mr. Bowman. In light of what we're about to do tonight, I do want to make part of the record, Mrs. Canavan, that I will be voting on this motion tonight, and it by no means should indicate that I support the building of the second high school. I do not, and I don't believe there are 4 other members here that would join me in changing that to otherwise. But recognizing that the majority of the board is going to build a high school, to throw protest votes because of that wouldn't be right, I feel personally. So I do want part of the record, I don't support the building of the second high school, but we do have to move on with the business that the majority wants to do.
Thank you, Mrs. Mangle. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Tom. That's it?
Yes.
Community service and policy. Bill?
Yes, tonight we're going to have the first reading of Board Policy 1280, titled Acceptance of Awards and Honors. And with your permission, I'll read that now for those.
Great.
The Board of School Directors recognizes there may be occasions when community groups and/or individuals may wish to present an award or in some way honor the school district or a specific school. The Board also recognizes that some awards could present real or perceived endorsement of the group or individual by the school district, the school board, and/or district administrators. With this in mind, it is imperative that the Board of School Directors be made aware of any award being considered for the district or a district school before such an award can be accepted. It is the responsibility of the superintendent and the appropriate responsible administrators to provide the board with advanced information about any award or recognition being considered. It is not the intent of this policy to block or inhibit awards. The intent is to keep the board fully apprised of any efforts by community groups or individuals whereby the good name of the district might be impacted by the award or recognition. This will be considered the first public reading of this policy, and we'll have a second one at the next meeting.
Great. Thanks, Bill. Elementary ed, Terry.
No report.
Secondary, Carmen.
No report.
Special ed and student services, Vicki.
At the January 11th work session of the board, presentation was made by Mr. Artwood and Judy Clark regarding recommendation to implement a system of integrated pest management. Tonight, the board will vote on implementing the integrated pest management in the North Penn School District in the amount of $796.33 per month. This program will be implemented by Lansdale Pest Control Incorporated throughout the school district schools. Thank you.
That's it. Okay, thanks, Vicki. Strategic planning, just want to report that Dr. Elko is currently gathering information on various strategic planning models, and we'll report on that a little bit later at another board. Let's offer strategic planning support services, David.
No report.
Okay, thank you. Finance, Ralph, I think we have something to do.
Yes, in November, the board had a presentation concerning the partial refunding of the 1992 AA bond series. At that time, the board voted to proceed with option number 2. It was stated at that time that the district would realize proceeds of approximately $200,000 for this bond issue. Tonight, Mr. Dick Wood from our bond counsel firm of Rhodes and Sinan and Mr. Lou Veridelli of Public Financial Management will report to the board the results of the bond sale which took place this morning. The bonds will then be, the board will then be asked to approve a resolution confirming this as the 1994 bond series.
Great. Dick?
Good evening. My name is Dick Wood. I'm from the Harrisburg law firm of Rhodes and Sinan, bond counsel for the district. For the benefit of the new members, I thought I'd just take a few minutes to give you some background as to how and why we're here this evening. And following that, I'll turn the meeting over to Lou Verdelli, who will present the results of the bond sale that was held on behalf of the school district today, followed by my presentation of the resolution. What you're going to be considering this evening is phase 3 of a 3-part financing that actually was begun in August of last year. At that time, the board had been operating under a financing team concept which would involve the solicitor of the school district, the administration, the president of the board, and the chairman and the members of the finance committee, along with public financial management and our firm. At that time, we presented a report to the finance team involving a three-part refunding proposal that was further refined and developed and ultimately reported to the board at a workshop meeting around the first part of October. After consideration and deliberation at that workshop meeting, the board then on October 21st adopted a resolution authorizing the implementation of a three-part financing program. The first was approximately a $12 million partial refunding of the 1992 bonds of the school district, the authorization to proceed with a $28 million cash management investment program via borrowing from the Emmaus General Authority, and a $10 million partial refunding of the 1992 bonds to be implemented in 1994. The reason for bifurcating the two financings was to take advantage of certain tax regulations that would result in lower interest rates, and I think you'll see the benefit of that strategy this evening. As a condition of proceeding, however, about the 21st of October, I believe Donna had requested a complete detailed breakdown of all costs, fees, and expenses associated with the three financing projects so that that could be made available to the board as a condition preceding to implementing any of the refunding projects. The other condition that we had is that the board wanted to undertake these projects if and only if it could realize approximately $600,000 in savings to the school district. So we had a goal target that was set by the board. We had approval to implement the three financings, and all of the cost, fees, and expenses were available prior to the implementation of any of the programs. An invited competitive sale was conducted by Public Financial Management on behalf of the school district on November 18th, and at that time you received proposals from 4 syndicates representing 27 bidders across the United States. As a result of that, we issued bonds in the amount of $12,110,000, and the net savings to the school district was $437,000. When we talk about net savings, we're talking about net after cost and expenses of issuance and net after any impact of the Department of Education's participation via its reimbursement to the school district on the payment of its debt service. We also authorized a $25 million borrowing from the Emmaus General Authority, and the result of that is estimated to be a savings in cash available for construction of approximately $210,000. The general obligation bond issue was settled about December 22nd, and the $25 million Emmaus General Authority bond issue was settled January 3rd. This evening, we're here to implement the last phase of the project, and that is a refunding of the balance of the callable 1992 bonds. As you can see from the math, we have already realized and accomplished the board's objective in realizing the $600,000 and plus in savings, and so what we're presenting to you this evening will be savings that will be above and beyond the target set by the board. Because of your agenda this evening, what we would like to do is come back at a later point in time and perhaps introduce our firms, Public Financial Management and Roads and Sign-In, to the new board members, and also perhaps to have a meeting with the president of the board to be certain that the board's decision of how it wants the financing team to operate is consistent with the board policies. Again, our challenge over the last 5 to 7 years has been to bring to the attention of the board any innovative and creative financing technique or model that could result in lowering the borrowing cost of the district. That was our job. Your covenant to us was never to shoot the messenger if you didn't like what was presented to you. So oftentimes we would bring things to the administration, to the financing team that was rejected. Oftentimes it was considered by the board, not accepted, postponed, deferred. But again, the basic challenge of the financing team is to present to this board all creative financing techniques that are available. Whether you find them acceptable or not is your business decision, but our job is to make sure that you're aware of them. So with that brief introduction, I'll turn the meeting over to Lou Verdelli, who will present the results of the bond sale this afternoon, and then I'll return to present the resolution and answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Dick.
Thank you, Dick. I'd like to ask you to turn to the blue covered document. It's on the inside of the offering statement. And if you can turn to page 1 of that document, please. As Dick had mentioned, the third phase of the refinancing program was scheduled to occur either in December or January, depending on when we thought market conditions were best, which would enhance the savings the most to the district. As you see on page 1, on the bottom chart, that is a tracking of municipal bond interest rates. And in December, about the time we were thinking of bringing this issue to market, rates had spiked up a bit, and we decided to hold off until January. In January, we have seen a lower supply of municipal bonds in the market, and therefore rates have come back down a bit. So that decision was a good one. I can ask you to turn to page 2. This is a summary of the bidding that took place this morning. And for the benefit of the new board members, it has always been a policy of the district to use the competitive sale process. It's a process in which our firm prepares the offering statement, which is the white document, as well as what's inside it, the invitation to bid. We prepare these documents and send them to over 100 investment banks across the country and invite them to bid on your bonds at a competitive sale. Page 2 is the result of that bidding which took place in our office this morning. As you will see, number 1 and the winner with the best bid was Mellon Bank. The number you want to concentrate on is the TIC number of 4.47. That is the true interest cost of this issue that we're presenting. There were 8 syndicates that bid on your bonds, and among those syndicates, it totaled 35 individual banks which were bidding on your bonds, which is quite a high number, especially the 8 syndicates. We normally see 4 or 5. Today we had the addition of number 5, Nike Securities, and number 7, Clayton Brown. Both firms are located in Chicago, and they were very interested in your bonds this morning. If you look at the range of TICs, you go from Mellon's 4.47 to Janney Montgomery Scott's 4.59. That's 12 basis points of a range. Those 12 basis points translate into about $12,000 per year over the life of your bond issue, which is 18 years, which is quite a substantial number. I'd also like to point out on this page, if you look down in the list of syndicate banks, there were several local banks that were involved in the bidding. First Fidelity, Dolphin Bradbury, Meridian, Butcher and Singer all submitted bids or were part of syndicates submitting bids for your bonds this morning. If we turn to page 3, it's the actual debt service schedules of the refinancing. Page 3 is the remaining portion of your series of 1992 bonds. This is the portion that remains after the November refinancing. And if you would note column 3, those are the interest rates that were on your 1992 bonds. Turning to page 4, in column 10, those are the bonds that were refunded. They are the remaining portion of callable bonds, those bonds which are eligible to be refunded. Turning to page 5, those are the bonds which will remain outstanding. These are the bonds that were not callable, all of the bonds after 1990, which go up to 1999. Turning to page 6 is the escrow account, which will be set up to make the principal and interest payments on the 1992 bonds until they are callable on September 1999. And if you note column 35, we normally talk about in a refunding negative arbitrage, taking away from the savings. In this situation, there was no negative arbitrage. Therefore, you had taken the best advantage of this transaction. Turning to page 7, this is the new bond issue, your series of 1994. Column 38 shows the interest rates that were bid by Mellon Bank this morning. And as you look back to the first page of interest rates, you'll see that these rates are quite lower. The number you want to focus on this page is in column 45, savings. In this current fiscal year, you'll recognize $251,000 in savings. In next year's budget, you'll recognize $56,000 in savings. And as we mentioned previously, it totals to $308,000, which is net of all costs of issuance and state reimbursement. This number of 308 also is in excess of what we had originally targeted back in November. We saw the savings at about $200,000, so you can see that there has been a slight increase in or decrease in rates. I'd also like to report that we're currently looking at restructuring the escrow account, which could possibly further enhance these savings. But that's something that the financing team's still considering. Page 8 is a breakdown of the composition of this issue. And if you turn to page 9, we put together a pricing comparison, which you should be very proud of. It shows your bonds, which were competitively sold today, and we compare them to West Perry School District, which our firm competitively sold yesterday. Both issues were $10 million. The thing to note on this page is your ratings. You had a Moody's AA rating and an S&P AA minus rating. It's one of very few districts in the whole Commonwealth that has such high ratings. And West Perry had to obtain municipal bond insurance, which gives them the AAA rating. But if we go down and look at the yields that were bid this morning, you'll notice that your yields were 5 and in some places 10 basis points better than West Perry's. What this means to you is that your strong credit rating actually made your bonds trade better than bonds that had a AAA rating based on the municipal bond insurance. If there are any questions at this point, I'd be happy to answer them. The rest of our document here is the compilation of all of the bids which we received this morning and the evaluation of those to come up with the true interest cost number. If not, I can turn things back over to Mr. Wood.
Any questions?
Same question I always have, is the breakdown of miscellaneous. Is that provided here, Dick, this evening?
No. We would anticipate, for example, on the last bond issue, miscellaneous just was moved over to the sinking fund, and that was about $6,000. So absent some change in the cost and expenses, that would just be additional money available to the district. It's typically put in there at this point in time to give you some flexibility in the structure of the escrow. But it's not the funds that are designated to be spent in any particular place at this point in time.
Any other questions?
Okay. We're at almost in the 3 phases, $1 million.
Right. So, thank you.
I have a question. The savings that we're talking about here, spread out over what time period?
They're spread out on page 7. $250,000 this current year. That savings will be on your 3/194 payment, and then there's $50,000 of savings in your 94-95 budget year.
That's for today's sale.
That's correct.
Okay.
I believe in the other sales, the savings were over the first 3 years.
We're just front-loaded.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Well, that's on top of the savings from the other one.
I understand that, yeah.
Good news.
It ain't bad.
No. No, these guys come with good information. You know,
Every
good
time.
stuff. Dick was saying that we have the opportunity to turn this down should we choose.
Why would we do that?
Since I've been on the board, we haven't done that. They've always come to us with very good,
And they always come back with
at the
better.
right times.
I think
So
within the
we like to see them here.
last year, we've seen about $1 million.
Does anyone know how
And
much of that's
refinancing.
in the current budget? How much is being put into the 93-94 budget?
About 800,000, Dick. We're gonna realize about 800,000 for this budget year, which will
It's
help
going to be there in
us.
June?
Excuse me?
Is it going to be there in June 30th?
Well, it'll help us fund some of the tax refunds we've had to make. You know, it's the Macy's and some of the bigger tax refunds.
Break even.
So, yes, it's, all it is plugging up a hemorrhage, that's all it is, you know.
But it's
Any
better
other
than
questions for
having,
Lou?
it's better than having to fund it, though.
All right, thank
Any
you.
other questions? Thanks, Rez. Okay, Dick?
I always like to point out to the board, and you're laboring and debating and deliberating over your budget and your finances, a point that should not be lost was Lou's comments about your AA credit rating. There are 501 school districts in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and there's probably only 10 or 15 districts, if that many, that have a credit rating of above a Moody's A. The rating that is given to us is dated January 20th, today's date, 1994. I'd just like to read a couple of statements. Favorable financial operations are anchored by favorable property tax collection and sound budgeting practices. The district also maintains a satisfactory general fund balance. Large taxable resources are experiencing steady and consistent growth. Debt position is satisfactory and payout is moderate. Credit comment, strong finances, a growing and diverse economic base, and manageable debt levels continue to support high-quality security. So it's something I think that the board and the community ought to be very proud of, because it does distinguish you as clearly being in the top 2 to 3% of the school districts in the Commonwealth. We have before you a resolution that was prepared in conjunction with Mr. Potash's office. It is a 20 or 30-page resolution. I would propose to summarize it. Again, for the benefit of the new board members, your borrowing is governed by the provisions of the Local Government Unit Debt Act that was adopted back in 1972. Prior to that time, the school district had historically used the North Penn School District Authority to finance its school building projects. The bonds are general obligation bonds. They are registered bonds under the federal tax code, and you'll see some references in the resolution. Turning to pages 2 and 3, we recite the historical fact of your issuance of the 1992 bonds and the approval of those debt incurring proceedings by the Department of Community Affairs, and your intention tonight to issue $10 million worth of bonds to provide a portion of funds necessary to refund about $9.8 million of those bonds. On the top of page 4, it states that you've determined to offer the bonds at private sale upon invitation, and that you received a proposal from Mellon Bank. The formal proposal is contained in the invitation to bid, and the actual Mellon Bank proposal is with Mr. Weir. You've considered the proposal, you desire to accept the proposal and to award the bonds, and to appoint Core States Bank as the paying agent with respect to the bond issue. We received a number of proposals over the years from a number of banks, been evaluated by the board, but Core States Bank is the paying agent of all of the outstanding school district bond issues at this particular point in time. And turning to page 5, section 1, you're authorizing directing issuance of the bonds, setting forth that it was in your best financial interest to sell the bonds at private sale upon invitation. And as Lou Verdelli indicated, there was a 12-point difference between the low and high bidder, and certainly it was in your best interest to receive those bids by competition. A brief description of the project for the refunding is set forth earlier, and you're issuing these bonds for purposes of achieving debt service savings. Section 4 is your formal acceptance of the bond purchase proposal. They were agreed to pay you $9,955,400 less original issue discount of $14,575. In Section 5, the bonds will be general obligation bonds. In Section 6, covering pages 5, 6, and 7, these bonds are registered bonds. The registered owner is entitled to receive an interest check every 6 months. This sets forth the mechanics for the paying agent to make those payments. Section 7 and 8 and 9 on pages 7 and 8 deal with the registration records that are required to be maintained by the paying agent, along with Section 10 on the top of page 9. Section 11 provides that the bonds will be numbered consecutively. Section 12, covering pages 9, 10, 11, over on page 12. These bonds are callable on September 1st of 1999 if interest rates would either stay the same or go lower. And these are the manner and the provisions that are required to be followed if you were to redeem these 1994 bonds. Section 13, you're appointing the paying agent to pay the principal and the interest of the bonds. In Section 14 on page 12, you're approving the form of the bond as set forth in Exhibit B, which we'll refer to in just a few minutes. Section 15 provides that the bonds can be executed by the facsimile signature of the President and Secretary. However, in Section 16, as required by law, there must be one manual signature, and that will be of the paying agent. Section 17 on the top of page 13, these bonds are general obligation bonds. What makes them such is your covenant to budget, appropriate, and pay on a timely basis the principal and the interest of the bonds, and your irrevocable pledge of the full faith, credit, and taxing power of the school district in support of that covenant. Section 18, covering pages 13, 14, over on to 15, is the mechanics for the creation of a sinking fund. This is a fund that is created by the paying agent, and when you go to pay the principal and the interest of the bonds, it's the account into which Dennis will deposit the funds when due. Section 19, you're appointing the paying agent as a sinking fund depositary and directing them in Section 20 to pay the principal and the interest of the funds. Section 21 requires you to receive the approval of the Department of Community Affairs. We have left a number of documents with Mr. Weir that he and Mr. Bowman have to execute, and Mr. Potash and I will see that they are timely filed with the department, and this is the authorization to your officers to execute those documents. Section 22 is not applicable since you did not have to obtain municipal bond insurance. Again, another savings to the district as a result of the financial condition of the school district. Section 23 is the authorization to contract with the paying agent. Section 24 is the setting forth the fact that this incurring of this debt is not in violation of the Act. Section 25 is the authorization to deliver the bonds. Section 17 consists of two parts. First paragraph provides that you make no use of the proceeds that would cause the bonds to become taxable bonds. Basically, that says if you're borrowing this money at 4.5%, you won't invest it at a yield greater than 4.5%. Second paragraph states that you do not anticipate issuing more than $10 million worth of qualified tax-exempt obligations. As a result, there is an incentive for banks to participate in the purchase of your bonds. That incentive results in there being more purchasers. The more purchasers, the greater the demand. The greater the demand, the lower the interest rate. Section 27 and 28 and 29, covering pages 18 and 19, sets forth the mechanics for the retirement of the bonds. Basically, what you'll do is enter into a bond retirement agreement with Core States Bank, into which you will agree to deposit government securities that will be sufficient to pay the principal and the interest of the bonds that you're being refunded. And Section 29 is the authorization for public financial management to secure those obligations in your behalf. Section 30, there is a report that has to be filed by Mr. Kelly with the Department of Education. This is the authorization for him to file that report. 31, 32, and 33 are legal provisions with respect to the effectiveness of the resolution. Following the execution page is Exhibit A, which is a recapitulation of the maturity schedule as taken from the bond purchase contract, followed by a 10 or 12-page form of bond, which Mr. Potash and I will send to the bond printers and for ultimate delivery to Mellon Bank. We would further indicate to you that a notice of your intent to adopt this resolution appeared at least 3 days in advance of this meeting, and if you decide to act affirmatively on the resolution, we will, within the next 3 or 4 days, advertise a second notice as required by law that will set forth the range of interest rates, the purchaser of the bonds, and any amendments to a draft resolution that has been available for inspection. If there's any questions on the numbers, I'm sure that Mr. Verdelli would be glad to answer those again. Any questions on the resolution, I'll be glad to answer those. If not, we would need a motion, a second. We would like to have a roll call vote, and it requires 5 affirmative votes for passage.
I have
Well,
some
I'd make a
questions.
motion to,
I have some questions.
Let him ask questions first.
If I could. In general, over the last couple of years, North Penn has been redeeming a lot of bonds and reissuing to get lower interest rates. Does that ever affect the saleability of your bonds? Do you get a reputation as somebody that's going to call them in and
No, no.
you don't think that's...
It's, because once you do a refunding, the old debt is no longer deemed to be outstanding. It will appear on
No,
your...
I mean in buyer's eyes,
No.
syndicate's eyes.
No. In fact, I can tell you that as a result of the bond sale today and the interest rates that you achieved, you basically sold better than a AAA, and you also had 8 syndicates bidding on your bonds. That's more than I've seen in the last year or two. It's an indication, at least in January of 1994, that the market would love to see AA bonds out there. I'd love to see you borrow more.
I would think it's the financial community's perspective that we're being smart by renegotiating these. So they see us as being conscious of the going trend and the interest in being able to take advantage of that. So that actually boosts our saleability and our ratings.
One of the comments in the Moody's report would attest to that. It says, a series of refundings were undertaken recently in order to reduce debt service payments. Again, I think that the credit agencies are always favorably impressed when you're reducing your annual payments on debt. And the buyers do not look at that negatively.
Okay.
Financial question. I don't know. I'd like to ask, what is the total bond indebtedness of the district at the time, at this time, it's standing with this bond?
If you turn to the offering statement, and we go to page 14. That is a listing of your issues that are outstanding. And we go down to total gross non-electoral debt, the $102 million number.
$102,959,617.
That's correct.
That's our total indebtedness as of this bond.
Yes.
Across there on the table 14, right across from it, you have the gross outstanding, which is that same figure, and next to it, the local effort or net of available funds and estimated state aid. Could you explain, what does that mean? What is that column represent?
Okay,
I
on
see they're running parallel.
page 15.
Yeah, page 15, table 14.
Okay, the State Department of Education reimburses you for principal and interest payments on every bond issue that you have outstanding. It's a factor of 2 numbers. It's your aid ratio, which is determined by the state, and the percentage of each project that they deem eligible for reimbursement. So they will take those 2 numbers, multiply them together, and say you might receive on a certain bond issue maybe 20 cents for every $1 of principal and interest that you pay. What that column is, it's reflecting all of that state reimbursement that you'll receive netted out of your total obligation.
Isn't there a limit on the borrowing of capacity of a district, non-electoral borrowing
Yes.
capacity of a district?
Yes, there is.
And what is
And
ours currently?
if you turn to page 16, in the middle of the page, net non-electoral debt limit,
Okay.
250% of your borrowing base. The legal limit is $188 million. You see what you have currently and the remaining borrowing capacity of $85 million.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Yes, Mr. Bowman. Sir, back on page 13, if you would. You have a list here of the 10 largest real property taxpayers. How up-to-date is this list? Because I'm under the impression that Rosenbergers had filed a reassessment, successfully had theirs lowered. How often do you, this is probably your standard list, but do you keep up on whether or not these companies are reassessed?
Look at the one.
Yes, Donna, I work with Donna Arter on that.
Look at the footnote.
Okay.
Yes, we also,
On
your
one.
solicitor works with us on this, and we
I
update
see.
it for every bond issue.
When you update it again, you may want to change Merck Sharp and Zone to their new name. I believe it's
Don and I have already done that, Merck and Company.
Merck and Company.
Right, this is a preliminary offering statement.
Okay.
After the bond, or after tonight, this will be converted into a final in which we can make all of those changes. And the final numbers will appear in this.
As you speak positively about our bond rating, how would our bond rating possibly be hurt if these large companies were to change the status of the amounts of money they pay in taxes? Would that hurt our bond rating?
I think the answer to that is that their assessed value is 26 million as against total assessed value of 200, about
Yeah, it was
almost
over
300 million. So it's less than, it's only 10%. And obviously it has an impact to you on a more local basis in terms of the absence of dollars. But, obviously if you had Merck close up, that would have some impact where you lose almost 9 million of it. But I think that the purpose of this, in the investor's eyes, is to show that you're not driven by your 10 largest taxpayers. For example, when another district that we represent, Derry Township School District, which is Hershey and its interest comprise 50% of the assessed valuation. There, the reading services would want to know how is Hershey doing, and they'd be looking at Hershey's credit rating. So this is, I think, intended to show the investors that you're not dependent on a single industry for your tax base.
Well, our solicitor will bear witness that the reassessments in this area, residential, business, et cetera, are becoming increasingly more deadly. And as you are doing a fine job bringing monies in, this area is what I refer to is hemorrhaging from real estate reassessments. And I realize that bond ratings can be affected by not only our personal performance as a board and as a district for reasons of malfeasance or just fiduciary lack of integrity, but there are other things I would think that around us that could cause or put a dent in our bond rating.
Charles provided us with a 5 or 6, 7-page letter documenting all the appeals, what was going on, and that's provided directly to the rating services. The key in this document is, from our perspective, is full disclosure. Anything that's negative or positive, we want it to be put forth here so the investor gets a true picture. I forget what the date of that letter was, Charles, but it outlined all the appeals, the result, any pending litigation that's outstanding against the district, status of all contract negotiations, and it's a rather complete letter. We don't feel incumbent to put it in here, nor do we put in here whose assessment went up or down from the last bond issue. We let the credit analyst at Moody's work with those numbers. But obviously,
But you give that negative information to our investors, so they do have that. Is that what you're saying?
yes, when they rate your AA, they have all the best up-to-date information. And what we do with this is that prior to this being printed, we have a conference call. Typically, the superintendent, sometimes Art is involved, Dennis is involved, Charles, and PFM at our firm, in which we review this document page by page to make sure that what's in here is as accurate as what we think we can present it fairly to the credit agencies. And we try to do that before each bond issue.
Well, it's just surprising that our bond rating can stay as as good as it is, and we have investors with the quality investors that we have, when the picture locally seems to be getting increasingly more dismal.
Well, I think the part that we're also still growing, and that this area is a growing community, also shows that we're going to have more income coming in. So I think the impact of the reassessments is offset by the growth that is going to be coming into this district. And since Merck is rather large, and they are also still growing, I think that's going to offset anything else. I don't think that a few key companies reassessing are going to affect our bonds in any way, our rating at all.
That's a good point, Carmen. Figuring that Merck is less than 3%, and Montgomery, the shopping mall, is just around 2% of our total assessed value. Even if they were to go out of business, we would be only talking 5% of the total assessed value within the whole district. So, and the key thing is too that we have now completed all the borrowing we need for all of the projects in the foreseeable future. Correct?
I think
We hope. Unless
Yeah,
there's something you guys aren't
nobody's
telling
jumping
me.
to answer us.
Yeah, I think that,
Yes,
and what we would do, and what we'll propose to do, is to come back to you after this refunding issue has been settled, to report to you a synopsis of what you ask us to do versus what we accomplished, to give you a reconciliation of all of the numbers that were the money coming in and money going out, and then also to present to you a summary of where you are with all of your cash financing, what projects you've allocated them to, how much money you have, and so forth. I think that an absent continued growth in the district, you do have a fair amount of money to complete the projects. I think I've heard at other public hearings, however, the administration's caveat that if the district continues to grow at rates that it has grown in the past, perhaps there may be some need for other facilities in the future. So I don't think anyone is casting it in stone that there'll never be another financing, but certainly, as the President's indicated, you have enough money to complete all the projects that you've authorized
Right,
to
to
date.
this point.
Based upon the estimates that we have. We're borrowing money for projects because of low interest rates, before Bob Breslin has had the opportunity to get the input from the administration, the board, and the staff as to how the facility should be built. If those estimates change, then obviously there maybe have to be some reconciliation of that.
But when we borrow the bonds, we must specify exactly which projects that money is to be used for, do we not? I believe it's a requirement that we must outline the use of that money, the proposed use of that money.
And for better or for worse, you've been blessed with an abundance of projects. And so rather than making the projects money-specific, we have tried to word all of the borrowing resolutions to grant to you the greatest flexibility. And the reason we've done that is because oftentimes the district has taken advantage of certain borrowings to fulfill certain economic opportunities under the tax code. For example, we've done $5 million borrowings when you can earn positive arbitrage, and then we've done $10 million borrowings, and depending upon where interest rates have gone, we have spent one pot of cash rather than another to try to maximize the rate of return to the district. But we've designated them for those projects. In fact, I believe until we had decided, you had decided on the high school project, there was a delay of almost, a year or more before we would implement, before this board would implement anything on the high school project.
Well, I would like to see a summary of our bond financing, exactly where we are, because as you say, there are many, many projects, and we've gone through a lot of restructuring here, and as a new board member, and I think for all board members, it'd be nice to catch up on exactly where we are on that.
We do that every year for you, whether you're undertaking a borrowing or not, just so that you're aware of where you stand in the debt market, what's going on, where your bond issues are. That's, again, part of the role of the financing team, to constantly monitor the outstanding capital debt of the district. We present that on an annual basis. And what we try to do is work that into one of your lighter workshops if they exist.
6 months.
Well, for instance, just our audit that we just approved, we had our bond indebtedness then at 76 million. That was as of June, I guess, or July, and now we're at 102. on here. So there's so much activity in short periods of time that I think it would be time now, if we're settling in a little bit on these things, to get ourselves updated. And I'd appreciate seeing one of those
We'll be
shortly.
glad to work with the
If the board's
Dennis,
in agreement.
Art, and Charles, and administration to do that, and then work with Alan to get on a proper agenda.
Thank you.
Any
I have
other
a quick question. Do you recommend districts, the percentage that they should borrow according to their limit? I forget what page it was on here. That it looked like we were probably now a little bit above 50% of what our limit would be. Do you come back with a recommendation on where a district could start getting into what we call a danger zone, or?
We leave that up to the infinite wisdom of the legislature, and they are the ones that have determined that it is an acceptable debt burden for you to have outstanding up to $263 million. So that's the limit. I think where we would get concerned, in part, is if it would impact your rating.
Do you know where that would be, or?
We might have thought some time ago, I think when we embarked on this process 5 or 6 years ago, that we might have been impacted by that, and the board and the administration had a lot of conversations about the timing. But to date, the sound financial condition of the district, together with its fund balance, has kept a strong position at the credit rating services, and they have not come back to us and said, you know, we want to take a really close look. The other thing that we do about every 2 or 3 financings is that we invite them down. We want them to come down and to see the North Penn School District, to tour your school buildings, to tour your communities. The last time we had them down is when there was a heat wave of 90 degrees, and I think at that time Bill Jacobs got him a van that had no air conditioning. And they were glad to get in and out of town real quick. So, but we do bring them down and have them meet with the board, have them discuss the planning, have them meet with the administration, the department heads. They're interested in your budgeting techniques. They're interested in your administrative configuration, status of your buildings. And so we bring them in to see what's going on here about every 2 or 3 years.
Thanks, Dick. Any other questions?
Hearing none, I'd like to, again, thank Roads and Signing and PMA for an excellent job, another nice round of savings and creative financing. I'd also like to move the adoption of the resolution authorizing the bond series of 1994 as presented tonight.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Bukowski. We're going to have a roll call, or first of all, are there any questions? Have a roll call vote. Mr. Ware?
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Clemens?
Yes.
Mrs. Leahy?
Yes.
Ms. Mingle?
Yes.
Mrs. Bukowski?
Yes.
Mr. Reckcamp?
Yes.
Mrs. Scher?
Yes.
Mr. Whites?
Yes.
Mr. Bowman?
Yes.
I have 9 affirmative votes.
Motion carries. Thank
One
you, gentlemen.
final comment is, even though we've had inclement weather and the school district's been closed and the offices have been closed, we've been in constant communication with your superintendent, your solicitor at his home. We've talked to Dennis at his home, so we've been in constant communication, and we appreciate that. Even Bill got involved in giving us the road conditions today. So we're going to have to make him part of the winter financing team. Thank you very much.
We appreciate you and Lou driving all the way down from Harrisburg.
We sure do.
Thanks
Thank you very
Good
much.
luck
Drive
getting back.
safely going
Yeah.
home.
You know, once you get out of town, then the roads will be a lot better, I guess. But thank you again. Okay, we'll move on to personnel. Donna?
Thank you, Mr. Bowman. We have no report from personnel, and I would also add that there is no report to offer from negotiations either.
There was a negotiation scheduled that, a meeting that was canceled because.
That is correct.
And that will be rescheduled at some later date. Thanks. Carmen, legislative.
I asked Ken Weir to hand out to the new board members the list of bills that are up for mandate relief. So I hope everyone got that, and if anybody had any questions, to please pass them along. The legislation is in the same position that we are in. They're closed because of the weather conditions. So there's nothing major happening in the legislation right now.
Great. No report from the MCIU. North Monco, Ralph.
Our meeting was canceled last Monday. It hasn't been rescheduled yet, other than that, no report.
Okay. And Merck, David.
Yes. At the November 9th board meeting, Donna Brown, Supervisor of Science Education, presented a status report on the district kindergarten to grade 12 science program currently under review and activities planned for 1994. Following that meeting, a North Penn School District proposal to improve the January to June 1994 elementary science program was submitted to Dr. Carlo Paravano, Director of the Merck Institute for Science Education. Proposed activities include piloting and evaluating materials at each elementary and middle school in the district, training of staff, establishing support systems to supply materials and equipment to teachers, designing new assessment methods for evaluating student performance, and building administrative and community support. The cost to implement these programs is $113,960. I am pleased to announce that the Merck Institute for Science Education fully supports the district's proposal and applauds the district's commitment to provide teachers with the necessary time for planning, implementing, and evaluating the hands-on science programs. The Merck Institute for Science Education will contribute over $81,000 towards the cost of the January to June 1994 activities. This grant represents the first steps of a partnership that can help establish a world-class science program in the North Penn School District. That's my report.
That's great, Dan.
That is great.
That's terrific. I think Alan just told me that's the largest grant ever given to the school district, and it's only for a 6-month period. Fantastic. Any of the other committee assignments that have anything to offer? Great. We'll now reach the audience of citizens. Is there any citizens that wish to speak to the board? I would caution you that I'd request that you limit your comments to 5 minutes, so all that who wish to speak can do so. Ma'am?
Good evening. My name is Ellen Janke. My address is 630 Spruce Street, Lansdale. I know what's coming up on here is the calendar, and since we've been on the phone so much during the week with this is off, this is off, this is off, I've been talking to a lot of parents, and we strongly feel that when you want to add snow days, I was told to come out in this weather and let you know this, that we do not see anything wrong with the days being taken from spring break, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, because I've asked around, and a lot of schools only get usually Holy Thursday, Good Friday, and Easter Monday, but Easter Monday is not important. But we feel that we would rather have those days taken. It would be great if we could do it this year because it's in March, rather than us go further into June, because a lot of parents will be leaving regardless, and there's just all this controversy. But we just think that those 3 days would be absolutely terrific, and we agree with President's Day and anything to keep the year a little bit shorter. And then my next comment was, I know next year we were going to start later, but my only and our biggest concern is you can do all the planning you want for next year, but please, let's get a contract so that we don't even have to worry about anything for next year. We love starting on the 8th and ending when we're supposed to, and barring snow days, we do not want to be Penn Ridge next year, okay? I just thought you'd like to know that's what the feeling is out there. And my last comment is about being closed, which I think is terrific because Mr. Bowman had to ride behind me this evening, and it is quite difficult.
My speedometer is going negative.
I looked at mine too. It was doing the same thing. I thought, oh, geez. The only thing that I feel as a walker, and there is a letter into the district because my son did fall last Wednesday down at school and hit his head, and he still has a hurt neck at this time, that I wish more consideration would be taken. Bussers, 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 great. I'm not one. There's a whole slew of us that are not bussers. We care that the children should be able to walk. That is so important to us because I think with redistricting, with more elementary schools, we are going to have more walkers. We are going to have 6th grade. So Gwynn Noor, for instance, is going to have even more walkers next year because we're going to lose a couple buses. And I think the percentage of walkers is growing, and I just wish that this could be taken into consideration, especially walking down Hancock is atrocious.
Mrs. in front of my
But you should be Bowman's happy.
Bowman seemed to do very well.
his
I
spiel.
just want to tell you, and believe me, we've talked a lot, a few of the individuals here on my cabinet over the last 2 weeks, many mornings at 4 o'clock in the morning. I can assure you that when we make the decisions to close school or open late, it's with regard to all the students, not just those that have to be bused. We recognize the sidewalk conditions, the fact that youngsters have to sometimes stand in the streets to board a bus, climb over snowbanks to get into a bus, have to walk in the street because the sidewalks aren't clear. We do take into consideration the walkers as well, believe me.
That makes me feel good, but it's just that at our school we have so many, we've had a terrible problem with the bus versus the people that drive, and it's just a whole issue that has to be taken care of at Gwen Nor. And we were using another exit, and it just seemed that that exit was not told to the most important people that there are people using this. And I'd say at least 30% of Gwen Nor probably walks.
I can tell you that in the inclement weather, Mr. Wood has his full crews out, sometimes working 18-hour days with very little rest over a couple of day period to try to break up the ice and get the walks cleared off, at least on our properties for the youngsters. Now, if the youngster's coming 3/4 of a mile to walk to school and our property is the only property that's clear, they still have a problem getting.
Yeah, but see, my son fell on Gwen Nor property on a sidewalk, and that's what just really like. But I wouldn't mind it if I was free to pick up my child or drop my child off at the front door. But see, I'm not allowed to because I'm only a mother that drives 6 children to school every day. I have to go past the front door.
And the reason for that is not because you are only a mother who drives 6 children. The reality of the matter is that we've set up a drop-off point for the safety of all the children. We have buses going into that particular location, parents coming in, and we needed to do something before a real tragedy occurred.
Right, because we did have an accident
Right,
this year.
exactly.
But there just has to be another place for us to go because you can look behind you and I don't see a bus. So I will stop, I will let the children out and I will get out of the way, but I know not everyone thinks that way. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Sir?
Good evening. My name is Jim Menzel. I live at 115 Forest Trail Drive in Montgomery Township, actually. I, along with Mrs. Connie Eash and Mrs. Sharice Klieger, presented some information to some officials from the school district concerning pesticide use at Montgomery Elementary School, and also some information about the Institution of Integrated Pest Management. I wanted to say, first of all, that I applaud the fact that there is going to be a vote tonight for or against institution of IPM on perhaps a provisional basis within the district, and I would encourage you to vote for it. I wanted to voice 2 concerns, actually. One is that my understanding is that there is going to be a continuation of the existing pest control contractor for the sake of continuity in moving from, if this is approved, from chemical pesticide use to integrated pest management. So there's no break in service. I would like to see and make a suggestion and see some sort of a motion along with the vote that a bidding process attend whatever documentation will follow that vote to ensure that the best vendor is chosen based upon not only the bid but also upon the vendor's experience. Integrated pest management is something that is relatively new, and the experience of the vendor can play a very, very large role in the success of that in the school system. My specific concern is that the extent to which a contractor who is chosen would have to use pesticides, and it is a part of IPM to use pesticides on an occasional basis, the extent to which he might make that choice could depend upon the level of that individual company's experience with IPM. If they are more or less successful with IPM, they may decide to go more heavily with chemicals. And I would like to take a stand against the use of chemicals to whatever extent is practical and possible. Another thing I wanted to comment on is that there was a part in the proposal that there will be prior authorization of the school and it does not, by the school, for the use of pesticides in occasions where they are required, because IPM in a certain instance may not have been successful or fully effective. I would like to see, along with this, parental notification of some sort, and that stems from the fact that even though the pesticide application is slated in the document here to appear after what are called formal school hours, school buildings do not cease use after school is closed at the end of the day, or on the weekends, or during summer vacation. So it's important for parents with children in those schools to know if a pesticide is going to be applied, so that if there are evening activities, weekend activities, or summer activities, they can elect to keep their child home from the building in the event that the chemical is going to be applied. So my two concerns are that the vendors be looked at over a period of time with regard to cost and experience, and that some sort of parental notification be used if whoever is chosen requires the use of chemicals for any reason, despite the use of IPM. Thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Krieger?
Mr. Bowman, school board members, my name is Sharice Krieger. I live at 100 Glasgow Circle, also in Montgomery Township. At last week's meeting, I appeared before you and requested the opportunity to enhance the areas of concern that I had with the proposal by Lansdale Pest Control in regards to this IPM. Last week, I pointed out that the main concern that I had was the lack of an education component. Nowhere in this proposal does it state this is going to be a comprehensive endeavor between the district, the individual school sites, and the community. Basically, this proposal is giving the total responsibility of the IPM directly as proposed by Lansdale Pest Control. I have a real concern with this. It's a little like giving the fox the keys to the hen house. We have already given you information that has 100% determined that we have a child in this district that was adversely affected through exposure to the pesticides that this chemical company was using. Many of you have already stated the risks involved with continuing that practice, and that you feel that IPM is a very good way to do that. However, I do still have concerns about the fact that none of the school board members have been able to see the slideshow that was presented to you administrators back on November the 29th. 2 separate meetings were set up for the purpose of showing that slideshow, but as already has been discussed this evening, the weather did not cooperate with us, and we have not had that opportunity to show that. I do have the slideshow here tonight. There are people in the audience that are willing to yield their time to me this evening so that I can give you this slideshow. I think it's in the best interest of the school district. There is nothing adversarial in this slideshow. It is a very proactive educational slideshow. It was put together very professionally by an environmental group that has used it successfully. And I once again would ask you for the opportunity to show the slideshow this evening, Mr. President.
I've been told right before we came in that you had offered this again. As with the last meeting, it's not normally the procedure to do that during a meeting. The bottom line, I believe, is that we in fact are going to implement an integrated pest management program. The details to that will be left to Mr. Wood as the Director of Facilities in working that, and our contractor that we have for this interim period, who we have full confidence will do their particular part to implement the control of the pests. The educational part is part of the district's part. That's something that we can evolve over the next 3 or 4 months. I don't see as an evening tonight the urgency to necessarily get down to the nitty-gritty of, putting out ladybugs to do that part of that particular IPM, or the individual nuts and bolts, as I call it. The board here is to make a decision whether to change our philosophy on how we do pest management. We've agreed that that should be on the agenda, and that we have a motion, or will eventually have a motion before the board to have that happen. I think that's a positive step on the part of the district. We'll fine-tune that, and that's the purpose we're doing this cautiously, and having our existing contractor do that for the next 4 or 5 months so that we can get a feel for how that works. I don't think a slideshow is gonna tell us how it's done. Where we're gonna find out is our building maintenance people working with our people from Lansdale Pest Control to see how it's done. We'll get better information, we'll get more experience, and then we'll bring those people in when we go through the solicitation process and then the request for proposal when we choose a new contractor in June. I don't see anything that we could benefit by that at this point because of the individual parts of it. We've committed to it, given that the 5 members support that during the motion. So I really don't see a need for it.
I would also say to Mrs. Krieger that I think at the last meeting, someone indicated if you would leave the slides, and you said you paid $100 for it. If you would make the offer to leave the slides, Mr. Kelly would be happy to give you a $100 deposit in the event we would damage them. If you left the slides, we could make them available to board members and the administration over the next couple of weeks to see them if anybody wanted to just have a better understanding of what you have available.
Well, am I
we'd
in?
be happy to, to give you a deposit because we.
Am I to understand that this format, audience comment, is for the members of the community to give input to the school board on issues that are on the agenda that certain members of the community may feel you may need some more information on than you have already been provided by your administrative staff? Is that one of the intents of this place on the agenda, audience comments? Okay? I have already stated on 2 separate occasions, even though you may disagree with me, that this is an opportunity for members of the community to provide information that they feel is lacking in a proposal that you're about to vote on that's going to cost this district more money. We've given you information that has told you of other school districts and other government agencies that have saved money through the use of IPM, but yet you have a proposal before you tonight that is going to cost you $700 and something a month instead of $300 and something a month. We have a concern with this. We also have a concern that there are components that Mr. Venezia gave to you that represent a moderate IPM program. It does not represent a true integrated pest management program. What you are doing is basically lip service to continue what you are already doing. Mr. Wood told you they have and have had a modified program, at least this is what you told us on November 29th, that you've had a modified program in place. Dursban is still being sprayed and was still being sprayed at that time. There was still a need for the spraying of Dursban during the modified.
No, we suspended that.
No. Please hear me out. Mr. Wood told us on November the 29th that there had been a modified program in place, but the need to still continue using the Dursban had become evident. We gave this board significant information which points out your liability in continuing the use of Dursban. You have a proposal here before you which, in our opinion, is not an integrated program. If I could show you the slideshow, you would see where the missing components are, and it involves the education, the site-based education of every school in this district.
And that's
the
not the
children,
responsibility of the Lansdale Pest Control to create and do an education program to tell the kids to keep their lunches that are 3 weeks
Precisely.
old out of their lockers.
Precisely.
That's our responsibility.
And there's
we're
nothing in
gonna
this
do that.
document that says this district is going to do that. All we have as community members is a document that says Lansdale Pest Control, and I will read your recommendation right here. We recommend approval to implement a full integrated pest management program as proposed by Lansdale Pest Control in the amount of $796.33 per month. This program shall follow the EPA guidelines.
And
Where
that's-
does it say in
that's
this
their
that it's going to
contract.
follow
It
this
is
district's
not- It is
guidelines?
not the district's policy to put in the contract that we're gonna undertake an educational program. This is merely to sign the contract with Lansdale Pest Control to change the philosophy for the way we do pest management. It is not a referendum or a vote on the board's policy for how we're going to implement the educational portion of that. We're committed to it. We're gonna do it. It's just not part of the contract that we're gonna vote on tonight. And we have through June the time to develop that so that we can implement a program to work with the kids, work with the teachers, to do that, in addition to having the program started to seal the cracks, to look for the way the pests are getting into the buildings, so that by the time June comes around, we'll know a hell of a lot more about this, and then we can go out and bid a contract. If that come in at less than what we're paying now, all well and good.
Well, Mr. Bowman, it's very clear to me that it is not the intent of this school board or its
Just say it was.
administration to allow members of this community to come in and to present to you information, be it a slideshow, a videotape, an audio tape, if it's not solicited to by one of your administrators to come in and give this slideshow, it's not welcomed. And quite frankly, I'm a little appalled by it. We just sat through a 40-minute presentation by two very qualified men who I'm sure are being paid for you to solicit your bonds. We just sat through that, and that was welcomed with open arms. I have been before you 2 times and requested a simple opportunity to present an educational, at least on my part, to educate this board on what's involved with an integrated program. And both times, sir, it's not been welcomed.
Did we not schedule a time with you, Mrs. Green?
Yes, and I'm here tonight, Mr. Bowman, because we were unable to do that because of the snow.
Well, I'm sorry about the weather, but as you know, we said it the last time that we were not going to do it at a public meeting, and if any of the board members or any of the rest of the cabinet would like to sit on that, that was the purpose for Mr. Weir getting with you to do that.
Well, and may I remind the entire board then as well, when this board was polled after last Tuesday's meeting to come in and to see that slideshow, the only 3 board members that were going to be present were Mrs. Mangle, Mrs. Perkowski, and Mrs. Scheer. And I find that quite interesting in light of the fact that each and every one of these board members was elected by the community to protect our children's health and future safety welfare. And I think that's quite interesting, enough said.
Mrs. Krieger, I'd like to respond to one comment that you made regarding the slide presentation, because you used the term administration with the board and reluctance to see the video. I just want to point out a fact, and I believe it is an accurate fact, that the 2 administrators who would be responsible for, one, the actual maintenance component of the integrated pest management system, Mr. Wood, and the employee, parent, and student education component and student health issues, Mrs. Clark, both saw the slide presentation. Is that correct?
Yes, Dr. Elko, but that was very reluctantly. When I requested for that meeting to bring in the slideshow, they told me it wasn't needed. And I had to come in and specifically ask for a slideshow projector to be placed on the table in front of me. Mrs. Ish and Mr. Mansell were at that same meeting, sir.
They did see
So
it.
every step of the way, I have had to basically push my way through in order to get this very simple education slideshow shown.
Mrs. Krieger?
That's not the feedback that I've received
Well,
from
I'm
Mrs.
sorry,
Clark
but
or
that's
Mr. Wood.
That is the accurate account of what happened, Dr. Elko.
That meeting,
Dr. Alco.
if I could,
Oh,
please, that meeting that took place on November 29th, we spent, I would say, approximately 2.5 hours, and we had asked you to bring your slideshow in to share with
That
us.
is not correct.
That is accurate.
That is not
Can I state just one thing? An inference is being made that the board members who did not choose to see the slides have no idea of what's happening. There are several of us who have worked in companies, who are part of the management of companies, and have extensive information on integrated pest management. So to assume that we did not look at the slideshow because we weren't interested is a wrong assumption. It's because we have knowledge, we have looked at other information, we have gathered other information, and we understand what the whole implementation is about.
Also, every board member received an audio tape provided by Mr. Whites, one of our board members, broadcast on PBS that gave a presentation on integrated pest management.
Is there any other
Mrs.
members
Krieger,
of the
I'd
audience?
just like to say that just because we're voting tonight doesn't mean that, you know, there still isn't an opportunity to view your slide and benefit from it. I know personally, other than the printed materials you gave here, I was rather uninformed on integrated pest management. I have read of a few newspaper articles where other districts have switched to it, and just from those accounts. But the interest is still there, mostly to get a general idea of just exactly what it is that we should be looking for here, and as a board member to have a feel for what we're implementing. But I am comfortable with the move from the DRS ban use to a more natural method of pest control. But so don't pack them away or ship them off anywhere. There's still an interest here.
We should definitely reschedule it, Mr. Bowman, for those of us that did
We
want to
just,
attend.
I don't know if it's 2 or 3 times, we were having a real tough time with weather here.
I was in Washington when it was scheduled, so I had no choice either. So, I mean, it's a matter of rescheduling when the weather's better, and I'm not saying that, I'm just saying it's not appropriate for the meeting tonight.
But I would like to
Any other
arrange for that.
members of the audience? Ma'am?
Connie Aish, 203 Pioneer Drive, Montgomery Township. My son wants to return to Montgomery as of March 1st, and I appreciate the fact that you're going to IPM. I had a couple questions. I'm still not absolutely sure that the pesticide's not there, and I wondered if you have any information that can reassure me that he won't, the poisoning won't reoccur. I know it's not being sprayed anymore, but it's never really been tested properly, and I was wondering, how do I know that it's gone, the pesticide is gone?
Art, do we have a way of testing it, other than air testing? We don't have a way
Well,
of testing
the air
it.
testing is not
That's what I'm
accurate.
saying. I don't think we have a way to test the surfaces.
I think Mrs. H is referring to swab testing.
That's right.
And we have not done that, and, you know.
Is that expensive, or
Who
why
does
isn't it
that?
not done?
I don't know.
That's right. Apex, I talked to Apex Labs, and they gave me information on the proper testing. I didn't ask how much it costs, but
I would suspect, Mr. Bowman, that would have to be a decision by the board, because you would certainly want to do all 17 facilities. I mean, I don't see how we could limit it to one building if we're going to do that type of testing.
Was there any indication or recommendation from our medical director or from the County Department of Health that any additional testing was warranted at this point? Judy or Art?
No.
For our peace of mind, could we at least get a cost of how much it would be?
Sure.
And then at least, I mean, I certainly think that it's worth the investment to have all 17 schools tested. If we're going to be going into this 17 schools. Well, it's only used in the cafeteria, so it's not,
Well, I would like
used
his
in the cafeteria area.
his classroom. I and 3 other mothers smelled what we thought was insecticide, and that's why I asked the Board of Health to come out and test, but they didn't come for 5 days after that, and the papers show that after 1 to 3 days, there's nothing in the air to find, and all the Board of Health did was test the air, and so.
But I believe that
and that's right. It was the day that it was 80 degrees and the windows were open. And
the majority of it was used in the cafeteria area.
Yeah,
And that certainly
right.
would be where
Not
the
even the
dissipation would not have
cafeteria.
occurred.
The kitchen primarily.
Right. So if you check that area, that certainly would give you a good indication.
yeah. But I really, when I walked into into the classroom there. It was very strong at the doorway area. And one of the students in the room said, well, it only smells in the front of the room, you know. And so at least some of the students could smell it too. I guess I have a sensitive nose. So I guess that's, and do I understand you correctly that you're going to start it now with Lansdale Pest Control, but that you're going to consider other bids, maybe with someone who has more education?
This will be a bid only through the end of June, through the existing contract, at which time we will resolicit bids for integrated pest management within the district from other firms.
And will you consider the education and experience too?
Here again, we'll consider their experience as they'll all have to be qualified IPM bidders.
Okay.
We'll check references on that first before we accept them as a qualified bidder. Obviously, that's a process.
Okay, but then you just go strictly by price?
By cost, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, sir?
My name is Roger Hall. Good evening. Address 8 Elm Drive, Lansdale. I came out this evening because I'd been following with some considerable interest the progress of the proposed high school. And I saw on the agenda at the beginning of the meeting that the matters for voting were issues that had already been discussed, and I was not aware of that. But I had some questions, and Mr. Chairman, with your permission, Mr. President, I'd like to still field my questions, if I may, because I think that the points I'm making, I believe, may be of help to the board as it considers the contract and as the district's attorney considers the contract to be placed with the architect. As we heard from the gentleman on the bond issue tonight, the point was made that ultimately the cost of facilities and spending, there is a point where you become to a top end that can affect borrowing ability of the district. So total costs are always important. There'd been a comment made, and I'd seen in the newspaper, a North Penn Reporter, about a week ago, of concern for the 5.5%, and I'm not raising a question about that. But what's important about the cost of the fees for the architect is the total cost of the project, not so much the fee itself. I did have the opportunity of speaking with Art a little earlier this evening and asked him the question, but my first question was, on what contract amount has the architect based his fee? And I don't know if there is a figure that's been established for that, that the architect has arrived at his fee from. And my second question was, what was the cost per square foot of the architect's last high school project? My next question was, how will the architectural services contract reflect the school district's concern for overall cost? And what stipulations, if any, will be made to control the total cost of the project? My next question was, what project cost parameters have been discussed with the architect, and what documentation has been generated qualifying any understanding or consensus of agreement in that area? My next question was, how will the school district ensure any such agreement or parameters are incorporated within the architectural contract itself? My next question is, as it is important, prior to entering into any contract with a design professional, to understand the scope and objectives for the construction in cost terms, what method has the school district utilized to develop a project cost estimate and to arrive with some certainty at the likely construction cost? And my final question was, separately from the cost, what understanding is there established with the architect of design criteria and objectives, and how has the architect's role been defined? I
think I answered most of those questions with you on the phone today. Obviously, some are a lot more detailed than the questions you posed to me, and I think you spent a lot of time talking to Mrs. Shear and Mrs. Mingle, and as well as Art.
I have spoken with several board members before I came to the meeting this evening. These questions I had not asked of you on the phone Richard specifically, we just talked in general terms as I was
Well,
expressing some.
I answered some pretty specific questions on the phone to you today that were identical to the questions you asked. You indicated to me that you had either submitted a letter similar to this to Mrs. Davis a year or so ago, or a generality, a more generality type letter for construction as a construction agent. Given the length of your questions and the detailed answers that you are requesting, I'd like for you to put those in writing and once again send me a letter requesting the information on that, and we'll be glad to provide you the information on it.
I would be more than happy to do that. We welcome the opportunity. My questions here were quite separate from anything otherwise that I may have done at any previous time. So please do not confuse those
your
issues.
phone call, I
These
think,
questions this evening were specifically addressed to help the board at this very point in time in considering its contract with the architect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Yes, sir.
I'm William Taylor. I live on Kenilworth Avenue in Lansdale. And if what I'm saying has already occurred to you, please excuse me. But I was frightened to see this idea of testing for a brand name in one site go to all the surfaces in the school touched by children. Again, testing for a brand name. When, as I recall, the symptoms that were related are caused by, so far as we know, not the particular brand name, but a component of it. So where do you stop on this? And this made me think, now this kind of logic is not appropriate here, but it's very common in our community. I had the same set of symptoms at work as they reported with the child. I don't know what happened, but Lansdale pesticide had not been there, nor had this material by that name. But it was kind of nice to know there was something outside me that might have caused it. I had blurry vision, confusion, strange lights around the side of my eyes. No kidding. I was relieved when it was over in half an hour and not taking longer, but I just panicked when I saw the possibility of this thing permitting.
Thank you for your comment. I think we appreciate that. Thank you. Is there any other members of the audience who want to speak to that? Okay, we'll move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Alpha.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman. On page BA2, please. Item 4A. I recommend the approval of the waiver of tuition status for students whose names are on file in the Office of Special Education and Student Services in accordance with Board Policy 5118.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Prokowski, second by Leahy. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Item 4B, before I make a recommendation, I'd like to distribute something. I guess it's rather prophetic, but I think a few board members last Tuesday said, well, we may have more school closings, and we certainly have had more school closings. And we have now had 7 school closings as a result of inclement weather. I have to distribute to the board tonight a 93-94 calendar, which will show the 7 days that we have been closed because of inclement weather. And without taking away the President's holiday or the Easter vacation, would show you the last day of the student school year, presuming no additional school closings because of inclement weather, which I'm not going to gamble on. I do know that I will pass them around, yes.
Yeah, they are. Because last day of school would be the 21st.
And they have been passed out in the audience as well. If you, I'll wait, okay, you see on this calendar that if we, subtracting the 7 days from January at this point would mean that our students would receive 13 instructional days in January. And the effective last day for students would be June 21st, 1994. Now, this calendar reflects all of the snow days to date. If we had any additional snow days to be made up, it would be the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, and so on. You heard the community member talk about taking the President's holiday. That would back our school year up by 1 day. And I will report to the board that at least one board member has contacted me in the last week, Mrs. Sharon, and talked about the possibilities in this calendar of taking a few days over the Easter week. And so that's another possibility for the board. This calendar reflects our tradition, which is to make up the days at the end of the year. And it's up to the board now to decide how you want to revise the 93-94 calendar. So I will wait before making any kind of recommendation, give you a chance to talk about that further.
Are we going to pull, do you still want to put this through for a recommendation tonight? Because I was hoping that, given everything that's going on now, and we might see where we're going, that if it could be delayed a little bit.
Well, one of the things that I would ask you not to delay is if you want to have President's holiday as a makeup day, that should be decided tonight, because we would want to get that notification out to parents next week and not wait to February for something like that.
Quite frankly, I think the kids have had plenty of time off. And,
I'd support President's Day going back in the calendar too. I would comment though that I have had a few phone calls from people who have committed to vacations over Easter break and have plane tickets that, bought on the Super Saver kind of deal. So those folks stand to lose a lot of money in terms of deposits on condominiums, et cetera. At this late date, it makes it real tough to take away some of that Easter break.
On both sides of that, though, I think that we're going to have people who are going to go ahead with their plans on both fronts. The only thing I could hope is if we end up working with a full week here in June, then we're going to have those kids, the 21st, if we end up filling up there, they're going to be gone for that entire time. Hopefully, if we had 2 days, Monday and Tuesday of East spring break, which I didn't support it the last time around, but looking at where we're at, there will be students that will be split. Some of them will be pulled out for that spring vacation, while others will be missing at that last week of June. But at least the main bulk of our student body should be able to be there so that we can have some educational program. The last thing we want is everyone just saying, this is it, it's the end of the year, you don't have to go to school and make up these snow days. And then those few kids that do go, they're sitting in a classroom that's really handicapped by the lack of attendance. So I thought if we could break them up, but I also worry about the teachers' union. What happens if we end up pulling these days off of Easter and then they go on strike and take up the days and we're at the end of the year anyway?
I think for this year, we should really continue with the policy. I mean, as far as February, President's Day, that certainly can go back in, since we're only in January and God knows what's going to happen in February. But I do agree that for the 94-95 calendar year, we really should talk about putting in snow days and taking it off from the Easter vacation.
There is no urgency. There is no urgency to vote on the 94-95 calendar tonight. If the board would like to deliberate more on that, allow community members to discuss it more with you. We're out early with the 94-95 calendar for one primary reason. But parents have indicated and said the sooner you can adopt the calendar, the better it is for planning. But we are certainly out well ahead of last year. We adopted a calendar last year in May, so we can pull the 94-95 calendar to give the board an opportunity to dialogue with people in the community and make a decision about that. The critical issue tonight, I think, is some decisions regarding 93-94 calendar.
I think one of the points about the end of the year also, Vicki, is that maybe in the elementary schools they may just have instructionals, but in the secondary schools they have tests, and these kids do not miss those tests. So it's not like someone's going to pull their kids, because last year that happened to us, and there was no way. The last week you're filled with tests, and kids are not going to miss it. They may miss the Easter break because they feel it's in the middle. So at least for this year, I think we should leave it as is until we have more discussion.
I think we're getting into very hot weather in June, and I think
Kids are very desperate. They're real anxious to get
those kids tend to be not paying attention in the first place because of heat. If you've ever been in any of our small, unair-conditioned schools, it's it's very, very unbearable for them. And I think it'd be more worthwhile educationally to have the kids go to school during the winter and spring days than to tack days on to the end. We're gonna inconvenience somebody no matter what we do. Let's think about the kids and learning, and also let's think about college seniors who are going to college who have commitments and obligations in that third week of June.
I think there's a couple of other considerations that we need to point out. Fred would like to talk just for a moment about one personnel issue related to it.
Let me talk about maybe three different things if I could. Vicki, you talked about the possibility of a strike. Obviously, we can't deal with that issue unless it is an issue. So that I don't think as you think through your deliberations here, you should concentrate in any way in terms of what happens if there's a strike. I think you have to make it on the basis of what's actually there. We got to where we are with the calendar that we have over a lot of years of having it differently. We used to have contractual language that talked about 190 days unless an act of God interfered. Well, obviously this kind of weather was considered to be an act of God, and therefore there were years that teachers put in less than the full 190 days. We got back to the 185 quite a number of years ago based on concerns and problems with the union. We also got to the point of more or less making the Easter week, that holiday week, fairly sacred, simply because each year we were getting down toward the period of time that we made the decision, and people had made some plans because they thought they were going to have it available, and then it didn't become available, and it was a whole mess in terms of trying each year to figure out what we were doing. And I think we've made it very clear to the union, to the teachers, that in fact that time is sacred. Feel free to go ahead and make plans if that's what you want to do, because we're not going to disrupt that time. That's why the calendar is laid out the way it is, and that's why the days at the end of the year that we do make it up are so clearly defined. Because if they go ahead and make plans for those days, then that's their problem. But you know, as you try to think through this year, think in terms of what kind of position we've placed ourselves in regarding that.
So basically, the employees may very well have there may be a lot of employees scheduled to be away for the Easter week.
We may have serious staffing problems. There's
well, you know, the problem we have, we don't have contractual language that takes our prerogative away to do this.
No.
But if you're going to say that we're going to have school, then administratively, we're going to say the teachers are going to have to be here. And that's contrary to the latitude that we have provided over a number of years with what we've been doing with that Easter week. Another thing that hasn't come up, and it's not immaterial as far as I'm concerned, that's why I want to mention it so that everybody is fully aware. I've heard some discussions that the possibility exists that in fact the governor may, or whomever it is that's responsible to make that decision based on the emergency, may say that the 180 days is irrelevant, therefore, you know, we don't have to make up all the time. We have a contract with teachers for 185 days. That is very different than the 180 days for kids. So that it would be my assumption that the board would adhere to the contractual obligation of 185 days for teachers, regardless of whatever would happen as far as the student year would be concerned.
To reinforce Fred's point regarding the decisions by the governor, we have had a precedent set by the governor in the past, not necessarily this governor, I believe it was 76, when they waived the 180-day requirement because of severe weather conditions. I believe it was a hurricane. Pardon me? Was it energy days?
They were energy
Okay.
days.
Okay, that's right. This calendar is built on a condition that we would be taking all 180 student days and would waive no days. And it remains to be seen whether he waives the state emergency days, which would have been today. Tomorrow, I believe, in this area is still declared a state emergency day. So he may waive 2 or 3 days. It's a serious problem for districts all over the Commonwealth.
That proposal, his proposal was last year also, because of the March storm. He waived the 180 days, and this school board.
Because our number of days for inclement weather that we were closed last year, I believe was only 4 days, so we were able to make those up without any undue
And the school
hardship.
board decided that we were not going to cut down on the children's educational less than 180 days. So, I
Correct.
mean, that is not, that's an issue that we had decided the last time that they should be in school 180 days, whether it gets added on or not. I do have a question, Fred. If enough of the board members decided to take off the calendar, the snow days in the Easter break, and a teacher already had plans for that Easter break, what avenue would they have to take those days off?
They could take days without pay, and I think that's a decision that the board would have to make in terms of whether they would grant them. We have granted days without pay for a lot of different reasons for a lot of years.
Then the
That
cost of
happens-
the district would be the substitutes. So we would be paying for substitutes if, well, days without pay, I guess not, that would
We're ahead
offset.
of the game.
It would be less money, but in either case. Would they be able to take their personal days?
They cannot take personal days, and understand we have several different kinds of personal
Right,
days.
I
They cannot take personal days for vacation. So that would not be granted at any time.
I thought there was a personal day
They
without.
can take personal day without reason, but they can't take it the day before or after a holiday. So they couldn't take it the Friday before that week, they couldn't take it the Monday after that week, they obviously couldn't take it that week.
Plus they could have a sick out.
Mr. Bowman.
Well, this could hurt us
I've
on
had
negotiating.
concerns from parents who've talked to me and said that their children who were seniors had already made deposits on places down at the shore, and that now they stand to lose all those deposits. And they're concerned about the end of when it's gonna end. So as we have parents who are concerned about their airline tickets over spring break, we also have to be sympathetic to those parents whose children have already made deposits for places after.
Or camp.
But they knew there was
Some
no
camps
guarantee
start
at
up
the end.
too.
There was
That's
no
true.
guarantee.
I think my
I
son's.
think there's a difference about where the calendar is structured and where it said snow days. I think this year it said snow days at the end of the year. And because of that, I wouldn't support out of this year taking out the Easter break, because there was, I believe, a commitment made to the community with the school calendar. That's what it represents. I do believe that we should move tonight on the President's holiday to try and bring that in as much as possible. I think that we should leave the 94, 95 to next year. I think as tight as it presses, that third week in June for 94, 95, we ought to consider using 3 days, publishing the calendar with 3 days of the Easter break as potential snow days. Also,
You're talking
with the rest of them
about
coming in.
94, 95.
94, 95. If in the 95, 96 year, people aren't happy with that, we have the option of August. And I think
If people aren't happy
starting
with it,
earlier.
you'll certainly hear about it.
Well, I'm sure, and I'm sure that's why if we put off 94, 95 this month and vote on it next month, the community will maybe come in and react to us about using 3 of those days in the spring break as snow days. But in any case, once we publish it that way, then I don't have sympathy for the person that made plans for being punished a week, if it's published.
One more comment regarding what Tom said. Given that we don't have any more snow days, I know that's a big
Right.
assumption right now, that would put us on the 20th for the last day of school. For seniors, we could still have graduation on the 17th. Should we choose to do that? And if Fred, if we could work it with the teachers union, we could even have class maybe the Saturday before, so we could.
You can.
I don't think he has that much.
If the governor gives us slack, we can.
Which we did.
The seniors that
Yeah,
go.
We did it last
I think we already have a
2 days.
consensus that
We
President's
waived.
Day is
2
back
days?
in.
Right.
All of those of you that had kids home over the
Dick,
vacation know that.
You're the magician, I'm not.
We did waive, it was pointed out, we did waive the 180-day requirement for seniors last year. I think they went 179 days.
No, you took
We took
the May and Service Day was a school day for
That's
the high
right.
school, and that's the way it was made up.
That's right.
Those kids made 180 days.
And you know that because you had a senior last year.
Yes, I did.
We
So
need
did
some-
I hear a consensus to put back the 21st of February in the
Yes.
calendar?
Yes.
As a school day?
Terry, Carmen,
Yes, I'm sorry, what was the
you
question?
want to put the 21st back in?
I'd like to, the 21st, yes, I'd like to
Okay.
put the 21st back
Dave,
in.
or Bill, Vicki? So the 21st is back in. Now let's get a consensus on whether we're going to put the spring break back in or not.
No,
I
we're
think
gonna do
a
it now.
compromise, Dick, on the first few days of spring break, 1 or 2 days of spring break, and 1 or 2 days in the summer. If we take the 20th and 21st and move it to the 28th and 29th of March.
We don't know.
Well, that's the whole point, Terry, is whether you're going to use any part of Easter week.
What I'm saying is split it so that the people that are going away on vacation for spring break, they're going to go anyway. So instead of having the kids out for 4 days or 5 days, we only have them out for 2. They're only
That's what I
missing
mean, it
2
wouldn't be
school
a
days.
long day,
And the same with the end of the year. The people that are going to go anyway,
So you're proposing putting in, say, the 28th and the 29th, the Monday and Tuesday of Easter week, and have kids go
Here
to school
again,
those 2 days?
it's not just the kids. We may have a personnel problem in the schools. It's not just the kids missing the schools, it's the teachers not being there to teach the kids. I'd rather have our paid permanent employees there for those 2 days than substitutes. And if the teachers aren't gonna be there, I don't want substitutes there, because then that's 2 more days wasted potentially because of that particular problem. So we need, this
think
is
we need a
it seems to me an all or none thing.
So then it's
folks.
at the end of the year.
It's either a roll call of whether the board member wants to take away from March, or the board member wants to add it to the end of June. I mean, those are the 2
That's
options.
exactly right.
So I think that would be our vote.
How many days we talking now? 3 more days?
What?
No,
You have no idea how many days
no,
are
as
gonna
of
snow.
now, as of now.
Let's go, Dick, come on.
1 day.
The discussion is, do we take Monday, Tuesday, and/or Wednesday or Thursday, that's of the people that are soliciting or that are supporting that option, have to come to some agreement to what they want.
We need 4 days, we have to, is that what you're saying? We taken President's Day.
We only need 1 day. We've only have one day that we have to
Why?
account for.
Where did you get
We
There
can
were
do any
7
number of days.
Wait a minute,
No,
the
to-
question
to
is
reach
that
the
there were,
180.
right now, we have taken 7 days. We had 5 days built in. If we take the President's Day, then it's only 1 day that has to be accounted for,
No,
which
you
is either,
had no days built in. You have a choice of when you want to end the school year, or when you believe the school year is going to end, because frankly, nobody will know when the school year is going to end, because nobody knows how many more days we may have to close.
well,
As it stands right now, with the consensus of the board, to have school on February 21st, our last student day would be June 20th, which is a Monday, barring any additional school closings. Now, you either have to decide to leave it that way, and we will take, any additional snow days between now and the end of the year will be made up on the 21st through the 24th, or we can put the last day of the school year into the week of June 13th and say the 16th of June, and put a day or 2 into the first 2 days of the Easter week that the youngsters go to school. I think what Mr. Bowman is trying to say is that for those board members who want to take a part of Easter week, is it 1 day in Easter week, is it 2 days, is it 3 days?
Or 4 days.
Or 4 days.
And all that does is move the last day of the year up until we move it back after it snows again.
Right,
So.
that's it.
Why don't you go around the bar?
Let's just take a look. Who favors something, taking part of Easter week away? Is there more than 4 people for that?
This year?
Anybody?
This year.
This year?
This year, at the end of the year.
Vicki,
We're given all this.
do you favor
headaches, I'll
taking
say
any?
no,
Bill?
and then-
I don't care.
That's it.
Bring it up, but I don't care.
Can you vote?
I gotta vote that
He's
way.
abstaining.
Which side, do you want to put them at the end or in the middle? I think I heard you say earlier, let's put them in Easter week.
Yeah, that was my idea, let's take it out of Easter, and listening to the discussion,
You're back to the other
there's
side.
there's
Okay.
pros and cons of all of them.
Yeah. I'll go with the end.
And?
And
Tom, you can say middle, in which case then I want to know how many days.
To try to not create havoc amongst the
No.
teachers that are scheduling vacations during the spring break, I'll go for the end.
And families too, and I think
And
what we've
families.
done now is we've had enough discussion to where we've seen the pros and cons, and where's the best place to put it, and that is at the end of the year. Next year, we're gonna say, hey, we can't afford 7 snow days by the middle of January. We gotta do something to account for that. When I went to high school, I had Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday off, and I would have loved having the whole week, but that's not in the cards for my district, so maybe that's what we wanna do next year for ours. But for this year, we've committed that to our employees. We published the calendar last May for this year for our students, and, you know, I think that creates too much of a hardship if we go back on that.
Now, to clarify one thing though, one more time. We're back to school now for President's Day. If we would not have any more snow days, does that mean that the seniors would graduate the night of the 17th?
Yes.
Okay.
If that's the board's choice,
Right.
and
We
you
can
would
make
wait
can
until
make that
about
happen.
April. You
Yes.
could make that
Make it
happen.
happen.
And if we, how many days then does that buy us for the seniors to graduate the 24th? How many more snow days could we have?
For the seniors to graduate the 24th,
5 more?
4 more.
Actually,
Four
5
more.
more, because
Another
we
week.
could waive
Yeah.
the 27th
Right.
back to the
Okay.
24th.
So that gives us a nice cushion.
Or the 28th, we
I
could
mean,
waive
the
it.
chance of them going into the week of the 27th
Yeah,
is,
we want.
well, who knows with the weather.
Unless we have the graduation at Ocean City.
Okay, I'll speak. Okay. Dr. Rocco, could you
Well, then,
continue?
let me try then to see if we can get a board vote on the 1993-94 calendar. So I recommend adoption of a revised 93-94 calendar, which will make February 21st, President's Day, a school day, and therefore will make the last student day, June 20, 1994, with snow days, 4 additional snow days built in, should we have to take any additional snow days the remainder of this school year. That's my recommendation.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by 8 people, is there a second?
Second.
We'll give that to White and Allen. White and Allen. Are there any other questions?
Sounds like a law firm.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Now,
Table.
I will table the 94-95 calendar, and I will seek individual board input, because the major issue that I will seek input from you on is whether you want to establish a calendar that the first couple of days of Easter week would be instructional days next year.
And I'd solicit any members of the audience or any of the members of the viewing audience that watch this on tape, should you have your druthers and wish to relay those to members of the board or the district, please send us a letter or give us a call. Thanks.
And this calendar will be going out next week to the schools, so that people will understand what the calendar is for the remainder of the year. That is, if we have school next week, so.
What about this watch other than service do? We have to keep that?
That's also a parent conference, so we do need it for parent conferences. Item 4D, I recommend approval to offer in-service courses during the spring of 1994 as listed.
So moved. Second.
I didn't hear who made the motion.
Terry and I.
Prokowski and Leahy. Any question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item E, I recommend approval to implement a full integrated pest management program as proposed by Lansdale Pest Control, Inc. in the amount of $796.33 per month through June 30, 1994. This program shall follow the EPA guidelines.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by White, second by Redcamp. Any questions?
Yes. On the contract that Lansdale Pest Control has submitted, the proposal or whatever, there's a typo. And under section 8, under their monthly program will consist of, the second paragraph goes all the way out to the left margin that says the cost to obtain the above-mentioned services will be an additional $26.50 per school per building. The way it's written,
it means that 1 through 8 are extra, and I think it only means section 8.
Charlie, you're gonna do the contract, right?
Art and I will go over that tomorrow.
That'll be, the proper wording in the contract will be such that the cost of the district is $26 for the entire integrated test management. And based on the way the motion says, is that their amount per month will not exceed that $796,
So it
as I
won't be less
understand.
than either.
Fixed price bid.
Whatever.
Any other questions?
Just a comment that we stipulate that, or ask of Art to come back to us to see how this is working, and so that we can have the public know that it is or it is not working.
And that we look into the full educational component of it?
I would refer that to Judy and Charlie and Don if we're doing that.
Right, that's not extra.
Then other than the outrageous gouge,
The outrageous.
they're doubling the price. Yes, it's only for 6 months.
One of the things we need to understand is when you look at and talk with the people in Montgomery County, Maryland, it went from $2,500 to $572 per year. We're only at $542. I mean, they talk about the marvelous saving. Yes, it was a marvelous saving. They went from $2,500 per building per year to $572. We're starting at $542 per building.
Art,
In other words,
for our
it's
information,
senior
Art, could you
children.
possibly get us some figures from a neighboring school district, what they are paying per
That's what
building?
we have.
Well,
Oh, you mean just for regular?
Yeah, just for
Spray and
comparison.
kill.
What does Wissahickon
Right.
do for, what are their monthly costs for their whole district? I mean,
Do that.
the cost savings again, what if they're paying $2,000 and we're paying $5,000? I mean,
Then I'll
and
feel better.
we've gone to 7. I mean,
You
we're
will-
still
you will
finding
feel-
that we had a contractor that was outbidding everybody else beyond all reason.
Well, we'll find that out anyway when we
Yeah, we
open it
sure
up for
will. We'll
bidding
find it out in
a
June, one way or the
couple
other.
months.
If my math is right, if the next guy's 46, I don't think this guy's ripping us off.
Other districts could not fathom
Thanks, Bill.
the small amount that we were paying for the service in the past.
I can't
When-
either.
When you take liability insurance for a pest control technician, workers' comp, and all the costs they have, I don't know how it's done. And Tom and I had a long conversation the other evening about this very thing, and I think Tom has done some research, and he's in agreement that it's a value.
Well, personally, for the short term, I think we should pay the money. It's something that we need to do. For the long term, we certainly have to have a full implementation of an educational process, implementation of the pest management, and making sure that when we spec this bid out, that it incorporates everything that the school district wants as far as pest control is.
Aren't we also asking this man to break the contract,
In June.
which we only had the right to do in June, correct?
Right.
We're saying we want to break this contract ahead of time. Now,
Make
what
him
would
rebid.
it cost to keep you instead of you making a big scene? I think
See,
we're
one of the reasons that we
making
haven't.
mountains
had
out of
major-
anthills here.
We haven't had major people bidding in the past, quite frankly. They would call after we put out an RFP, and they would say, I can't compete. I'm talking about the Westerns and the Ehrlichs and the major people, that they could not compete. And last time out, we only had three quotations. And they were all small companies.
Well, I
And
think
if you
too,
use simple math, the square footage of the facilities, and take a look. I looked at it, compared it to our facility, I know what we pay, and I do believe I know about integrated pest management. I do believe I know about pest management pretty well, due to the fact that I work at a company that is monitored by a full-time USDA veterinarian and also many other inspectors. And we're getting a very fair price from the current person who's doing it. I concur wholeheartedly with Mr. Allen. It's not a bad price.
You know, it's not really about the price per building, or that 700 is equivalent to the 500 price. It's not about that. It's what I heard Mrs. Krieger say is that they are suggesting to implement a full integrated pest management program, and she's saying with her knowledge that what they have proposed is not full. And that's why the educational component, if you don't teach the kids not to leave the sandwiches, we're still gonna have problems.
We
okay?
have-
but-
And all I'm saying is, it's not the pennies, I'm not talking the pennies.
Let me
Do
comment.
It's-
you want
it
the
doubled
do you want the
one.
Lansdale Pest Control to do the educational program to teach
No, and that's
sanitary?
what I heard
and-
you say tonight,
that
and that's
will
what
be
I've been
done-
pursuing for
Right.
pushing for the slides, is it's not their responsibility,
That's right,
it is
yes,
ours.
and that's what
We are
Mr.
asking them to carry us from now till May. I'm not bickering the pennies. Just make sure it's a full program, which includes teaching the teachers, the parents, the homeroom mothers, the board, and everybody about, and the custodians about it. It's not the pennies.
You're worried about the word full, and let me comment.
This says a full program.
A
She
full
says it's not.
program on the part of the contractor. Our component of that will go beyond IPM by Lansdale Pest Control to include arts people sealing cracks that are big, finding problems. And I fully expect these guys for this fee to be solving a lot of the problems by doing that between now and May, so that the schools will be in a lot better shape when we go out to bid this, so that when these contractors come around and look at our buildings and say, oh, this is gonna be a snap, the fact that costs may even drop.
Dick,
Okay.
that's what I heard you say
All right.
immediately preceding this meeting, and before that, I didn't.
Okay, but, we're committed to trying to keep the kids from leaving their 3-week-old lunches in their lockers. I mean, that's very important. And that's something we as a district have to take on through Judy and the folks, and we're committed to doing that. IPM, to us, we've changed the philosophy. We're not gonna spray for bugs, so you get rid of them by, one, not inviting them in. And that's our part of it,
I
okay?
heard that. It's not.
And Nick, we should not assume that we have not been educating in the past. Bill's food service people, our monthly meetings with our head custodians. I mean, we talk about all the things that are included in any pest management program. I mean, my people certainly know that when they have a locker that's infested with ants, that you get the student, you bring the student to the locker and you clean the locker out. That's education. And we, I don't want to portray the fact that we haven't been doing the kinds of things that we needed to do. I mean, our buildings and the amount of pests and rodents we have certainly spoke for themselves in the past.
That's an excellent point, Art. The custodians, the food service department, classroom teachers, nurses, they certainly discuss sanitary conditions in classrooms. Teachers will look through children's desks, make sure there's not an old stale sandwich left over in there for a week. All those kinds of things are done. That's not to say that we can't do more, but that's not rocket science either. And I think that our teachers and our administrators and our staff are up to the challenge of educating our children to monitor sanitary conditions in the classroom and the schools. I don't think the pest control people have to do that for us.
Any other comments? Okay, we need a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr.
Carries.
Bowman, I abstain, and I need the record to show that I have a conflict of interest with Lansdale Pest Control.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dr. Rocco?
Thank you. I recommend approval to purchase 2 additional movie lots at Lansdale Square, which are located within the area of interest of the school district in the amount of $800 each, for a total cost of $1,600.
Just a bill.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Prokowski, second by Clemens. Whites? Sorry. Any question?
Just a comment, are we going to get a full report on all our lots?
That
and
was
what we're gonna do
stated.
with?
Mrs. Leahy, that was stated tonight, Mr. Clements' report under facilities, under the advice of Mr. Potash and Mr. Degger. They are in the process of negotiating a land swap, and it's of the opinion of Mr. Potash and Mr. Degger that a public disclosure, full presentation on the movie lots at this time would be detrimental to that swap, and that a report would be made following the closure of that deal.
The question was, besides that part of it, is the legalities and the tracking down of people who own the other lots in order for us to be able to do something with those lots because of the paper streets? If I'm correct on that,
I
Charlie?
recall the report, can I answer this? The report was that we ascertained what the total cost was for the acquisition of the lots that the district owns, and what were the costs involved to obtain it. What we paid and what were the costs involved. And that's what I think is what
That's
we're
gonna be part of the full presentation
Well,
after we do this.
The implementation, the usefulness, excuse me, it's getting late. The usefulness of these lots are contingent on being able to track down the other owners because of the paper streets. Am I correct on that?
No, let me say this to you. We have acquired a very, very substantial number of lots. The reason we don't want to talk about the total number of lots because we're at that point where there are not that many lots that we have to obtain to fill out what we consider to be a proposed school site, which would lend itself. And many of the lots that we have acquired, we also acquire rights in paper streets, and but then we also have lots outside that we have to think about, and in order for us to give clear title, marketable title to that whole interior. The importance of what we're doing now is to obtain all the lots within the square that we think will be a potential school site, trade off outside lots for lots that are within the school site. And we don't want to disclose at this particular time what we're negotiating because first of all, that is a subject for executive session under the Sunshine Law, and it does affect your negotiating ability. But I have reported to Dennis, I think probably maybe to Ken. We started this back in 1971, I think, maybe even earlier, and I all reported what the costs were, what our files show regarding what it cost us from legal fees and plating, title, profanatories costs, and you're going to be very, very surprised what the actual costs were. I don't want to say more than that.
Thank you, Charlie. Any other questions? Let's see, so long ago, did we have a motion on this? We did. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Item G, I recommend the approval to rent the garage apartment at the Hull property to a school district employee at a rate of $150 per month. The renter will provide security, snow removal, and lawn care.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Leahy, second by Allen. Any questions?
Just a comment, I think this is really a great deal, and I guess, Art, you cut this deal. I think it's, this is wonderful. I think we're fortunate to be able to rent to somebody we actually know, have on file, can verify as a person in good repute, and price is good.
Yeah, that's terrific. I
Sure
would
is.
ask, the snow removal was just the walkway, it's not the whole
Well,
drive.
once we start using it as a construction headquarters, it'll be the walkway and part of the driveway. That will be done with tractor that's on location.
Okay, great.
Art, I do have a question. I think it's a good idea to have someone there. We had talked about this before. Is there, or can we see at a later date, a proposal to keep that building and to be able to possibly rent that building?
That will be tied in through the architectural planning and the township. We've also talked about whether we would keep the barn as a storage area for outside equipment, for, hurdles and high jump pit mats and that type of thing. But it would all have to work into an agreement with the township and something that the architect would.
Given the proximity of that building, it can lend itself to being rented out by the school district, and we can make some money on it.
It's very close to the roadway, and
Right.
that may present a problem.
Well, it would be away from where our schools are, so it'd be useful for an office building or something of that nature, and I think we should pursue that.
We will
Thank you.
certainly have it as part of our discussion.
Great, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I-
Motion carries.
I recommend the acceptance of the gift to the district from the General Nash Home and School Association playground equipment in the amount of $5,200.
So moved.
Moved by Magel, second by Prokowski. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Item I am striking from the agenda because of the weather situation. We've postponed that bid opening, and it will occur on January 25th, 1994. You could turn to page BA3, please. I recommend the nomination of the professional employees as listed.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Kirkowski, second by Leahy. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Page BA4, I recommend the nomination of the paraprofessional employees as listed.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Shear, second by Kirkowski. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 4.2, I recommend the board approve the retirement as listed.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Kirkowski, second by Leahy. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Item
Motion carries.
Item 3, I recommend the board approve the resignations of the paraprofessional and support staff as listed on pages BA4 and BA5.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Kirkowski, second by Leahy. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Page BA5, I recommend the salary change as listed.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Kirkowski, second by Leahy. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Page BA6, item 5, I recommend the approval of the additions to the 93-94 professional and support staff substitute lists.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Kirkowski, second by Leahy. Any questions?
One question. Fred, what does this bring us up to as far as number of substitutes
As
On our
far
list.
as number of substitutes,
on our list?
I can't really give you a good idea. We've got several hundred.
Not enough to cover us in the event of school.
Not anywhere near, we're nowhere near 800 yet.
Thank you.
That's the bottom line. Any other questions?
Oh, Dick, I didn't say that, Dick.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 6, I recommend approval of the additions and changes to the extra duty assignments for the 93-94 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Leahy, second by Kirkowski. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Item K1, I have a correction. That would be the junior high school as opposed to the high school winter guard. And with that correction, I recommend the student travel as listed on page BA6 and addendum BAA1, which is inside the front cover.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Leahy, second by, or Kirkowski, second by Shear. Any questions?
Question. Can we assume that even though number 1 doesn't say it, but number 2 does say it, number 2 says that they will be accompanied by staff and parent chaperones?
Always assume that.
Always assume that?
Oh, yes.
Guaranteed it's not an assumption.
Not on my part. Thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Under information, a vandalism report is attached for the board this evening. I would also like to report to the board that there will be a superintendent community coffee next Thursday afternoon, the 27th at 4:30 here at the Educational Services Center. I would also like to convey to the plant operations staff and to the transportation department my appreciation for a job well done over the last couple of weeks. While we have had 7 days without school, we have also operated a number of days on time and 2 hours late, and the work of the plant operations and transportation department, getting the schools ready and getting 20,000 youngsters transported a day safely is really to be commended. So thank you, gentlemen, and please thank your staffs on my behalf. With that, that concludes my report, Mr. Bowman.
Thank you, Dr. Arco. Treasurer's report from Dennis.
We had cash receipts for the month of $2,758,019.05. Our year-to-date receipts, $73,911,717.04. We have disbursements for the month of $7,347,985.04. Our year-to-date disbursements, $40,680,086.58. We currently have term investments in the amount of $3 million and temporary investments in the amount of $32,909,000.
Thank you, Dennis. Now the general fund invoices.
Yes, I recommend approval of the sanctions in the amount of $9,321,006.02, and the disbursements for the month of January in the amount of $505,343.07.
So moved. Moved by
Second.
Camp.
Second.
By Leahy. Any questions? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Food service report, Bill.
Based on an income of $277,725.24, food purchases of $125,602.43, and operating costs of $149,220.55. I'm pleased to report a very modest profit for the month of December of $9,015.70, but I make no guarantees for the month of January.
And how do we stand in the yearly?
Year-to-date, that lowers our year-to-date deficit to $36,935.51. And as the board knows, typically it's during the month of January that we go into the black. And I would doubt that this year.
So we all lost our bet, right?
Probably a big seller.
You're in charge of transportation, you have only yourself to blame.
You could just ride the buses and sell the stuff on the bus and then just take them back home.
To
Any
all the-
questions?
To all the parents that can't get out of their house to go food shopping.
Any other questions of Bill? Great, thank you, Bill. Federal program, Charlie.
No report.
And Charlie. It's
I don't have much of a report, other than I'd like to bring to your attention an important case which was decided by Judge Lau. You will recall there was a great deal of publicity given to spot assessment cases in Montgomery County. There was an estimated $17 million in refunds, which would have to be made by the counties and the local municipalities. As solicitor for the Lower Merion School District and the attorney representing Lower Merion School District in that particular case, I was very happy to see that we won. Lower Merion was faced with an estimated $6.57 million in refunds alone from the school district. This case is of significance because North Penn School District is comprised of 8 municipalities. We haven't had many spot assessment cases so far filed in the North Penn School District. And the significance of this case is that there are no retroactive refunds. If a person raises a spot assessment, it is from the date forward that the Board of Assessment decides. So therefore, if an individual files claiming a spot assessment way back when, and he files it in September of '94, he can only be given relief if he's entitled to it prospectively and not retroactively. As I said to you before, there was an estimated $17 million out of the county in estimated refunds that would be due. And that's why the case has such significance.
Charles, is that because of the statute of limitations on filing appeals?
Well, that was one of the arguments we made, but they were arguing constitutional, violation of their constitutional rights. And in fact, there were decisions that were being made that the Board of Assessment was finding that a constitutional violation had existed by virtue of the spot assessment. And then there were filings. It was a class action. This was a class action seeking refunds dating back to when that spot assessment took place. So as I said before, it is a case of great significance. I have no doubt it will be appealed. But that was the class action, a representative group, which was filed for taxpayers similarly situated. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. There will be an executive session of the board after the meeting to discuss personnel matters. Is there a move for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
We're adjourned.
Fred, how long?